Welcome back, learners. We are working on our ancient Greek civilizations from Engage, New York, and these are the read alouds from the listening and learning section. This will be read alouds 3 and 4, so if you haven't listened to read aloud 2, you might want to go back because we're going to be picking up where that story left off. So if you don't remember, a quick summary is that Zeus wants all of the gods to meet on Mount Olympus, which is their home, and he has sent the messenger god Hermes, his son, to gather all of the Olympian gods, and so far he has found Apollo, he has found Artemis, and he has found Poseidon. So he has quite a bit more to go. So let's jump right on in. Remember that this will not include any stops for vocabulary or comprehension and discussion questions. So if you want any of those to use at home, please let me know. All right, let's get started. Hermes, messenger of the god, was on a mission for his father Zeus, the king of the gods. Zeus was calling the most powerful gods back to their palace at the very top of Mount Olympus. Already, Hermes had passed along Zeus's message to Apollo, the handsome god of music, poetry, and light, and to Apollo's sister, the huntress Artemis. Hermes had also carried the message to Zeus's brother, the mighty Poseidon, god of the sea. Hermes' task was not yet done, however, and now he hovered above Greece, looking and listening for the signs that would lead him to the next god he wished to find. This did not take long. In the distance, Hermes saw flashes of light from earth beneath him. Flying in that direction, he soon heard screams and angry shouts, and now he could see below him 2 armies engaged in battle. The light Hermes had seen were flashes of sunlight reflecting off armor and weapons. The soldiers of one army were pushing back the soldiers of another army, which had now begun to panic and run. Perched on a cloud high above the battle, and clearly excited by the spectacle below, stood Ares, the god of war. Dressed in all red, tall and strong he stood, and his smile grew broader as Hermes landed beside him. "Hail, brother," said Ares, for he was also a son of Zeus. Pointing down, he asked, "Isn't it glorious? Here are humans at their best and worst, some displaying heroic courage and others cowardly fear." He pointed, and a beam of light shone on one of the desperate soldiers. "I have been watching that fellow there," said Ares. "See how he seeks to bring his fellow soldiers together to win the battle?" Hermes had never understood his brother's attraction to battle, but it would not do to say so. Hermes thought to himself, "It seems to me that the best elements of humans are love, loyalty, and learning, not fighting." But to Ares he said, "Zeus summons us all to Mount Olympus." Without taking his eyes off the battle below, Ares nodded and said, "I'll be there." But Hermes had already flown to the Greek city-state, Athens. Here he found his sister, Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, walking among a grove of olive trees. With Athena was Zeus's sister, Demeter, goddess of plants and of the harvest. In her wise, intelligent voice, Athena was saying, "And so, dear aunt, would you please make sure that this year's crops of olives is especially plentiful for the people of Athens?" Gently, Demeter answered, "I shall be delighted." Instantly, the nearby olive leaves turned a deeper shade of green. Hermes landed a kiss on the aunt's cheek and then smiled at Athena. "I've come to tell you that Zeus calls us all to Mount Olympus." "Of course," Athena answered. Hermes was off once more to his last stop. Back to Mount Olympus, where he had started. There, Hermes followed the loud clang, clang, clang of metal striking on metal. His brother, Hephaestus, the god of fire and the blacksmith of the gods, was standing by his red-hot forge with a huge, heavy hammer in each hand, striking them in turn against a jagged lightning bolt. The lightning bolt was being shaped on top of an anvil, a heavy block of iron or steel with a smooth, flat top. Waiting outside to carry the lightning bolt to Zeus, who, as you remembered, was the god of lightning and thunder, was a magnificent winged horse named Pegasus. Hephaestus did not even notice Hermes until the messenger god called out loudly enough to be heard over the hammer. "Greetings, brother!" Hephaestus stopped hammering and, wiping the sweat from his brow, looked over at Hermes. The two gods, though brothers, appeared to be opposites. Hephaestus was huge and muscular in his upper body, but slow-moving due to an injury that had left his legs badly damaged. Hermes was slender and so smooth that he seemed to almost dance in all of his movements. Hephaestus's face broke out into a grin when he saw the messenger god. "Brother, where have you been while I have been tied down here at my forge?" he asked in his slow way. "Practically everywhere," Hermes answered. "Zeus has sent me to summon everyone to the great hall." By everyone, Hermes meant the main gods, of whom he himself was one. In fact, there was only one left to contact. "Would you ask your wife to join us?" he asked. Hephaestus frowned. "She does not like to be awakened this early," he said, even though it was nearly noon by now. "But if it is for Zeus, I will do it." Hephaestus's wife was the most beautiful of all the goddesses, the goddess of beauty itself and of love, Aphrodite. Aphrodite was used to luxury, as Hephaestus was hard to work. Hephaestus told Hermes, "We will come." Finally, all the gods and goddesses had gathered. Aphrodite told Athena in a laughing voice, "I'm sorry I look such a mess, but Hephaestus said I had to hurry." Athena smiled to herself, for as always, Aphrodite was absolutely stunning. Athena had no chance to reply, for now the king and queen of them all, Hera and Zeus, entered. Hera was the goddess of feminine power and women's lives. She knew why Zeus had summoned them all. The family of the Olympian gods was about to welcome a new member. Zeus raised his hand for silence, smiled, and announced, "Today is a special day. Today we invite to join us here on Mount Olympus a new god, the youngest of us all. Humans will worship him as they worship the rest of us." Zeus continued, "Welcome among us Dionysus, god of drink, pleasure, and theater." Suddenly, there appeared a handsome fellow with laughing eyes, a lazy smile, and dark, curly hair. Dionysus spoke in a light, easy tone. "I am honored. I shall teach humans to make drinks and raise cups of it in praise of us all. And they shall dedicate their finest plays to the gods and goddesses. In these ways, I hope to provide pleasure to humans and honor to us all." And so it was that Dionysus joined the household of the gods and goddesses atop Mount Olympus, completing what is known as the 12 Olympian gods. So that is part 2 of our Mount Olympus read alouds. And I never learned that Dionysus was one of the Olympians. The Olympian I know as the 12th Olympian is Hestia, and Hestia is the god of hearth and home. But in some literature, Hestia and Hera are kind of combined into one goddess, and that leaves room for that 12th god, which would be Dionysus. So it depends on what you're reading, whether it's Dionysus or Hestia as the final god. So now you know both, versions of what it could be. So then we're about to move on to read aloud number 4. So that would be about the Olympic Games. So if you have already heard this read aloud, or this is where you need to stop, go ahead and stop. If you're ready to continue, we're just going to carry on. All right, here we go. The Olympic Games. The travelers came from all directions, from every part of Greece and from every Greek city-state. Some even came from such different places as Egypt and Spain. Many traveled on ships, some rode on horseback or in horse-drawn chariots. Many hardy souls walked the whole day, determined to reach their distant goal, for they believed they were on a holy journey. Rich and poor, carried in luxury and treading on foot, they came by the thousands to take part in and watch the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games were held every 4 years at the site of Olympia and included contests in which ancient Greek athletes would compete. Because these games were part of a religious festival to honor the king of the gods, Zeus, they were considered sacred. In the first Olympic Games, there were only foot races or running races. Later came events like wrestling, boxing, racing horses and chariots, throwing the heavy stone discus, and throwing the javelin, the type of long spear. Among the travelers to the games one year were 2 men named Myron and Pindar. They made their way to the sacred site of Olympia in a private carriage drawn by a team of horses and driven by a servant. The passenger in the brown cloak, Myron, was so muscular that other travelers wondered, is he one of the Olympic athletes? But Myron was not an athlete. He was a sculptor who used his muscular arms and huge hands to carve statues out of bronze and marble. Myron was telling his traveling companion, "Of course you're right, Pindar. I could just invite the champions to my home after the competition and carve statues of them there. But I want my statues to show the exact moment when a runner starts to pull ahead in the race, or the instant when a discus thrower is about to let go of that heavy stone and fling it down the field. So I prefer to see those Olympic events with my own eyes." His friend Pindar smiled and answered, "I, on the other hand, have written poems in honor of champions without ever having seen them compete. But I am less interested in watching a runner cross the finish line in first place than I am in the effort and determination it took him to get there. It is this I admire, and it is about this that I write." Myron grinned. "When your way works for you, and, well, just as mine works for me." Suddenly, a voice called out, "Pindar, what are you doing with that Athenian? Don't you know we Thebans are still fighting a war against Athens?" Turning, Pindar recognized a friend from his hometown of Thebes. Directing his carriage driver to stop the horses, Pindar said, "My friend, you know that all such conflicts are set aside here. Everyone is guaranteed safe passage going to and returning from the Olympic Games, so that all may gather to take part in this grand competition to honor Zeus and the other gods. The Olympic Games were more important than conflicts the cities were having with each other, and these conflicts were put on hold so that everyone could gather safely for these sacred games." Pindar went on, "Besides, Myron and I are artists. When I write a poem or when Myron carves a statue, our interest goes far beyond the boundaries of any one city. We honor these champions as examples so that we might encourage all Greeks to do the best they can in their own lives. This is how we honor the gods who gave us our hearts, our minds, and our muscles." By the time Pindar and Myron reached Olympia, the greatest athletes in the Greek world had already gathered. Pindar and Myron looked around excitedly at the running track, the long jump pit, and the vast horse racing stadium. In the distance, thick clouds hid the peaks of Mount Olympus. All of the athletes were men, for there were no events for women in the original Olympic Games, with the exception of the horse and chariot races. If women owned horses, they were allowed to enter them into the races, but they were not the ones who rode the horses. Women were not even allowed to be present at the Olympic Games to see their horses win. Victory was a source of great pride for the winners in their home cities. An Olympic champion received a wreath of laurel leaves to wear atop his head. But more than that, he knew his name would live forever as a hero in his city's history. In fact, many cities awarded large sums of money to their champions. In some regards, things have not changed much in the 27 centuries since the first Olympics. Modern athletes, too, may win fame, even if their greatest reason to compete is for the love of the sport. The Summer Olympics are still held every 4 years, but now there are also Winter Olympics, with winter sports such as skiing, snowboarding, bobsledding, and figure skating that are held 2 years after every Summer Olympics. The location of the Olympic Games also changes each time. They have been hosted in such cities as Seoul, Korea, Atlanta, Georgia, and Athens, Greece. Men and now women from all over the world travel to the chosen city to compete. Even if their countries are not getting along, people set aside their conflicts, just as in the ancient days, in honor of the games. Even though many centuries have passed since Myron and Pindar traveled to the Olympics, they too are still remembered. Today, Myron's depiction of an Olympic champion, the discus thrower, remains one of the most famous statues in the world. The original statue was lost long ago, perhaps in a war or an earthquake, but fortunately, someone made an exact copy, so we can still admire Myron's work. As for the poet Pindar, the Greeks loved his poems so much that for centuries after his death, he was remembered by the priests and priestesses at Apollo's temple. They would pray at closing each night, "Let Pindar the poet attend the supper of the gods." Later still, when the Greek king Alexander the Great ordered that Pindar's home city of Thebes be destroyed in a war, Alexander commanded his soldiers, "But keep Pindar's house safe from the flames." Pindar's ideas about doing our best with whatever talents we are given and about getting along peacefully with one another remain part of our thinking today. In fact, we still call this way of seeing things the Olympic spirit. So that's the end of our second read aloud about the Olympic Games and how things have changed. And there are still changes. New games are added to the Olympics. Different places host the Olympics every 4 years, and now it's kind of every 2 years because you have the Summer Olympics, then 2 years till the Winter Olympics, and then 2 years till the Summer Olympics again. So it alternates between summer and winter. So it'll be interesting to see how the Olympic Games continue to progress. But it's really cool that they started so long ago and is a contribution we continue to this day. So don't forget that no vocabulary, comprehension, or discussion questions were included in this video. And if you would like them to work on at home, send me a message or a note so I can make that happen for you. All right. See you next time.